an unhealthy work environment. Hopefully all of you here actually are working in companies that go along and actually look after you perfectly, and there's no problems. But this is a one actually where it varies again from business to business. Some people actually are very people conscious, others not so much. But I mean, there's a lot of evidence out there to show that continual organizational change together with work intensification and greater job insecurity are having a substantially adverse effect on occupational health and safety. And this is kind of down to that fear, uncertainty and doubt that I mentioned before. It is a big challenge for everyone, and it is something that you got to be careful of. The first guy here, actually, your poor manager, I mean, I'm calling this person the toxic boss, and it's basically someone that goes out of your way to go along and make things difficult for all the people that work for them. They are very much power driven, and they believe that they're better than everyone else. He or she, just be wary of that actually, since we have. But it's great to go along actually and see so many females here, because it's good to go along and actually see that imbalance in the proper way as well. So we'll go along and we should continue success within that space. But this person is always trying to control your every move, and if you do something wrong, he or she is going to pounce on you. You're trying to go along and they seem to be unwilling to listen, and it's basically their way or the highway. If you don't do it the way he or she wants it, that's not good enough. They've never heard of coming on and giving praise from people actually do something effective. And I mean, they're also the sort of ones that they will actually happily take credit for things that you've actually brought to the table. So I mean, they'll go along and take all the credit for everything that their teams do without coming across actually where, for me, a successful manager is someone actually who gets the most out of the people that work for them and support them to be able to deliver on that, because their success is my success, and that's the part, there's a selfish part to it, but the thing is you have to make time for your people to go along and help them get the most out of themselves as well. And that's the part where, you give the credit when the job is done properly. The other one actually that I captured as a point here is that if your boss is the sort of person actually who would expect you to turn into work even if you're on your deathbed, that's probably not a good sign. Okay? Culture. Yeah. The culture part actually is again an important one, that a lot of companies go along and say that their people are their greatest asset, but they don't necessarily back that up with examples. And I think a classic one there actually is accountancy companies, especially on the audit team side, right? They expect their employees to work 12, 15-hour days. Now, I don't know actually how they measure the productivity of that 12 or 15-hour engagement, but the thing is that they go along and actually expect them to go along and do that, and it's part of their remit. And going along and mentioning things like teamwork and collaboration, those things are kind of foreign for them. They're more focused on setting targets, having goals, looking at production errors, infractions, verbal warnings, written warnings, and the most important one of all, chain of command. So I mean, there's that kind of regimental approach that actually happens, and that's not something that comes along and generates things like collaboration and what you want to go along and get out of those things. So if you get that kind of command or that statement from someone, just count your blessings that you're lucky to have a job, that should go along actually and set off the alarm bells and red flag, and you need to be kind of either approaching HR or looking at that next opportunity somewhere else. Bullying actually, bad customer service. This is the one actually where a lot of the focus is it's all about me. So this is the employee actually, where the employee says, the customer, what about them actually? This is what can I get out of this? I'll go along actually and make time when it suits me, not actually when the customer needs it or when my colleagues need help. Is to go along and they meet their co-workers or customers' needs when they feel like it rather than when it is needed. They always seem to look busy, but they don't necessarily go along and deliver anything meaningful as part of it. And the whole thing around that actually is to go along and it's selfish political gain. That's what their focus is all about. And if you're ever unfortunate enough to go along and experience working for a failing company, this is the one actually where the company actually is going through tough times and it's a lot of focus is on productivity, and I mean there's talks about people being let go and all that type of stuff. That becomes very, very stressful, and it can be depressing for some people. I mean, some people handle it better than others. So not only are you worrying about your daily performance, but you're also worrying about how you're going to pay the bills if things fall apart. And I mean, that in turn actually has been known to go along and cause people to, like, it's not just actually whether you're sick or not, actually, it's where you go along and start not turning up for work. And there's like that thing I was actually saying earlier, I wake up in the morning and say, oh listen, the last thing I want to do is go to work. That is when that type of activity kicks in. Health issues and absenteeism are on the rise, and it's not by accident. As a result of soulless lack of humanity, toxic workplaces are stressful and unhealthy, and over time people will break down and experience health issues. For physical health, think fatigue, and for emotional health, think depression, burnout or anxiety. And those are very, very commonplace. I mean, burnout actually is one of those ones where people are expected to go along and put in the extra hours to finish off a project, and actually they meet the deliverables, and all of a sudden the next thing becomes a priority, and the next thing becomes a priority, and the next thing becomes a priority. So all of a sudden you're actually working at that top level for an awful lot longer than you can actually are capable of doing it. So you do need to go along actually and have that high stress, or use your stress to go along actually and build up your energy to do it. But at some point you're going to have to be able to take that energy level down a bit and be able to recover. And this is the part where a lot of companies actually need to be wary of what the cause of that will be. As more people become discouraged and frustrated under the grip of a toxic workplace, you'll note a rise in anger, conflict, irritability and blow-ups. Not to mention more sick days, absenteeism, turnovers and disability. All of these things actually are where you're having challenges for the employees, because it's an ongoing struggle. And I mean, like, some employees actually do an excellent, or some employers I should say, do an excellent job by organising things like health checks. And this is where they've considered the worker as an asset for the company. In order to do that, they'll go along and actually help them to do that kind of preventative checkups to go along and actually get them through what needs to happen. Again, productivity actually is this one where, if people are not putting their heart and soul into it, or not doing it as well as they can do, then that causes some sort of a negative impact. And especially when you're part of a team, if not all the team are actually pulling together, it's the weakest point actually is what's going to call that bottleneck or the stumbling block, depending on what's going on. Well, I mean, the productivity is always going to be impacted negatively if you don't go along and look after your people. And the number one thing that employees talk about from work itself actually is they hate doing their jobs, but they're also actually, I have too much to do. I'm actually overloaded. And this is the part actually where, I told you I feel your pain. This is the part, in that scenario there actually, it is, they keep kind of working on it. And I mean, sometimes the most important word you have to learn in that space there is no. Or going along actually and recognizing that, okay, I have all of this stuff on my plate. What do you want me to stop so I can start doing this? How do you want me to prioritize things? And that's the part actually where, in some of those cases actually you get what you tolerate. And the thing is that it is okay in most companies to be able to go up and put up your hand and say, no, this is too much. Like, something's going to break if I keep doing what I'm doing here. Because it's more common than you think, and it's not confined to banks. There are times actually when just things build up, and in even something as simple actually, that if I was looking for something to someone to do something for me, I would be more inclined to go to the person who actually did it well for me the last time than going to someone different. And sometimes what happens there actually is the same person that's been picked. So they get more and more and more stuff, and actually it's people actually that are asking that are, rather than balancing out the workload, you're going to the person who did it best the last time. So you may be your own worst enemy by doing so well, but it is, hands up, I can only do so much. But interesting enough, it actually has harmful side effects. It actually does do your high blood pressure. It can have heart problems, proneness to illness, restlessness, depression, and substance abuse. We don't want you going anywhere near that, right? So,
just caffeine.
but in fairness, actually, coffee can raise your blood pressure as well.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple coffees is not a help. Like all of these things in moderation. That's the part actually you got to be careful of. And I mean, even with these things as well, actually, where you actually have work overload, where you have workers or toxic workers, as we call them, they're basically people that are going out of the way to cause difficulty or harm actually within an organisation. They can be a huge obstacle to all the people working around them as well. It's everyone's responsibility to keep a finger on the pulse of the organisation to make sure people are safe and not working in a hostile environment. And if you're a target of a toxic worker, here are a few things you can do to cope. Surround yourself with people that are like-minded and that will actually have your back. Avoid toxic workers by creating physical distance between you and them. They say that if you can actually put a gap of up to 100 feet between you and someone else, they may as well be in another country. You won't even know they exist, typically. Right? Communicate assertively when dealing with bullies and toxic workers. State the facts, document everything that goes on, and I mean everything. Dates, times, what happened, and what the response was, because those are all things actually that you can use to build up a profile to say, because going in and telling your boss actually that someone is bullying you is useless to them unless you can have some data there as well, so be careful of that. Steer clear of office gossip. Be professional, get your work done, and go home. Right, and that's the part where the work-life balance kicks into play as well. And where possible, avoid confrontation with a toxic worker. However, if they do find you, don't give into it, because all of a sudden the target on your back gets that a little bit bigger if they feel they can get away with pushing you. So it's important that you go along and be yourself, be confident, and actually, don't accept what they're putting at you. Just make sure you pick your battles wisely. Focus on the positive and look for the good work of others and the positivity in your life. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a gratitude journal. This idea actually of when your day goes through, writing down 2 or 3 things actually that went well. The power of positive thinking is huge, And I mean, again, speaking for myself, at my age, actually, when you wake up in the morning, that's a good start. Seriously, I mean, I've a friend actually who, 53 years of age, he went for a 70-mile cycle on a Sunday. He didn't wake up on Monday morning, right? And these are the sort of things actually where, like I say, when you're young, free and single, everything is fine, but things do actually start changing. And I mean, it's 53 years old, it's 27-year-olds out playing soccer, it's a person walking across the street. You never know, right? So, I mean, it is focus on the positives and see where it goes from there. And again, there's things you can actually do, like as a manager, one of the things you can actually do from a well-being perspective is lead by example. It's going along actually and, manage your working hours. Go along actually and take your holidays. The amount of people actually who don't work through their holidays or try to get paid at the end of the year for working, it's meaningless. All you're doing actually is giving the company extra time. You need your holidays to go along and actually recharge the batteries. So make sure you do that.
In Brazil, sorry to interrupt you, in Brazil legally you can take up to 23 months for you to take the first month of holiday. Because you work for the first 12 months to be entitled. You're not entitled as in Europe, like every month you get 2 days and a half or something. So you gotta complete 12 months, and the employer they can still wait for another 11 months to pay you for the first 12 months.
Ouch!
Yeah.
And when you take it, you can sell back to the company only 10 days.
Yeah.
And you take another
Yeah.
training, but it's 3 days, not work days.
Yeah, but like, you know, even in Ireland, if you were on holidays in Ireland, right? Again, this is according to EU law, and if you get sick while you're on holidays, you can actually go along and claim that as sick leave in the company, and you actually get extra days after your holidays are over.
During your holidays.
Yeah. So if you're like, you know, especially if you can get a doctor's certificate.
You
Right.
kind of stop your holiday.
Exactly, yeah. Because again, the 2 weeks are there to go along and actually help you recharge. If you're sick for 2 of those days, they shouldn't count. Now, does it work everywhere? Yeah. It depends on who your employer is. But a lot of these things actually are also driven, like if you have a supportive leadership, because if it's not coming from the top down, you're on a uphill struggle. These things actually would kind of do things like maintain high levels of engagement. I mean, you know, if people feel valued in the company, they tend to give more, and that's an important part. Likewise, if you're not treating them properly, they'll do as little as they can get away with in a lot of cases. Providing learning and development opportunities is always positive. Appraisal and recognition. I mean, everyone likes to go along and be recognised for stuff that they've done. Something as simple as a thank you goes an awful long way. Some people like to have the big applaud in front of a group. Other people like to have, you know, if their boss comes over to them actually in the corridor and actually says, listen, great job last weekend, or for delivering that, that means an awful lot, because it means that someone else is paying attention to what you're doing, and that's a key part of it. And that age-old one actually of work-life balance. What exactly is it, and how do you go along and actually achieve it?